This woman is Annapoorani, or Porni, as what people around her call her. Since she was a kid, she had a knack for cooking and love for the culinary field, so talented she could distinguish ingredients with her eyes closed. Her talent was all thanks to her father, Rangarajan. Porni had been accustomed to accompanying and helping her father in cooking, especially since her father's job was the chief cook of the temple in their village. Not only skilled at cooking, Porni also had extensive knowledge. She dared to criticize the mistakes in the food made by Asave, a quite popular full-fledged chef who was also her friend Kirti's father. Porni admitted that she could make the same, more tasteful dish and proved it. Asave tried it and admitted the deliciousness of Porni's dish. Porni told Asave that she had a dream of becoming the best chef in India, just like her idol who was known as the best chef in India, Chef Anand Sundarajan, whom she always saw on television, but behind her big ambition, Porni realized that it was not easy. For her to achieve her dream was a tarnish to her family's name. Her family was Brahmin, one of the forbidden groups in the Hindu religion that believes in not eating meat. Short story, Porni had grown. As an adult, she often got scolded by his mother because she refused to marry the man her family picked for her. She even quit her job in a private company because she wanted to pursue her dream of becoming a chef. Her father was disappointed and swore to never give his permission, saying that if she became a chef, she would learn to cook meat and eat it, which was all forbidden, and their family would be ridiculed by people. Rangarajan then told Porni to continue her education at university, majoring in business management, but Porni's childhood friend Farhan remained faithful in supporting her to become a chef and even invited her to enter the same major as him, namely hotel management. Not only bringing her the registration form, Farhan also encouraged her by saying that she had lived for her family and other people's judgment even though her future was in her own hands, and that it was the right time for her to follow her heart. After thinking about it thoroughly, Porni finally chose the hotel management major on campus that her father wanted and lies by claiming that she chose the business management major following her father's hopes. During her studies, Porni had many friends who supported her dream, even Kirti's father often helped by pretending to be Porni's father when needed. One day, there was a lesson on how to prep and cook chicken. Porni looked very afraid because she had been a vegetarian since childhood. When she hid behind her friend, unfortunately, she was called to practice cutting the meat, but because she couldn't stand it and was afraid, she immediately fainted. That incident made Porni lose her confidence and admit to Farhan that she couldn't continue her studies if she had to cook meat, but Farhan, who was always by her side, told her that she could cook meat without having to taste it. He told Porni about his mother, who was born a Muslim and a vegetarian who could cook delicious biryani, a delicacy that had meat in it. Little by little, Porni's doubts disappeared, which made her realize that to be a chef, she must be able to process any ingredients, so she finally dared to prep the chicken into biryani rice, but still, it didn't taste good. It was always the biggest difficulty for her. Out of curiosity, Porni decided to try Farhan's mother's biryani on the Muslim holiday, and it turned out to be true that the taste was delicious. Several months had passed without any significant obstacles until one day, Porni's father suddenly came to campus. Porni panicked and immediately changed her uniform, then ran towards the business management department building and pretended to be a student there so that her lies wouldn't be exposed. Apparently, her father only came to give her the house key because he was going to visit a sick relative. When her father left, Porni rushed back to his class again to practice cooking chicken, but when she was about to try it, Rangarajan showed up and caught her eating meat. Porni's father was immediately tried by the Brahmin community because his daughter was considered an insult to the religion and tarnished their beliefs. Even Rangarajan, who had served the community for 2 decades, was immediately fired from his position as a cook. Porni was very sorry for making her father suffer. Therefore, she did not dare to fight anymore and decided to leave campus. Even when her father arranged her marriage to a man named Santosh, she didn't refuse at all and kept silent. The night of the wedding, Farhan, who had loved Porni for a long time, suddenly sneaked into her room and invited Porni to escape to Chennai to pursue her dream of becoming a chef. Porni refused outright because she didn't want to hurt her father again. Suddenly, Porni's grandmother went into the room and shockingly, without the slightest fear, Farhan immediately explained that he would take Porni to Chennai so she could become a chef. After hearing that explanation, unexpectedly, the grandmother actually told Porni to go with Farhan because she didn't want Porni's dream to be ruined by an unwanted marriage. At first, Porni was hesitant because she didn't want to hurt her father and was also afraid of people's response. But her grandmother asked her not to pay attention to anyone because if she later succeeded in becoming a famous chef, her father and the community would turn to support her. But if she failed, then they would insult her even more. Her grandmother said that she had to take that risk. Her grandmother said that she would deal with her father and told her to leave to achieve her dream. Porni immediately hugged her grandmother and went with Farhan while her grandmother came out and pretended to panic, saying that Porni had run away secretly. A few moments later, Rangarajan got a voice message from Porni. Porni apologized to him. She realized that her father would be blamed by everyone, so she would come back after she could make him proud. Short story, Porni finally arrived in Chennai and stayed at Kirti's boarding house. Kirti immediately accompanied Porni to apply for a job as a chef at a hotel called the Royal Colosseum. At that time, the hotel's HRD happened to be out, which made Porni immediately taken straight to meet the executive chef, Ashwin. When they met, Porni immediately asked for a job and admitted that she was good at cooking various types of food, but Ashwin, who turned out to be an arrogant figure, coldly kicked her out with an excuse that she was not fit to work in his kitchen. When Porni was about to leave, she happened to see her idol, Chef Anand Sundararajan, who entered the hotel. Back at Kirti's boarding house, Porni was scolded by the house owner, saying that Porni wasn't allowed to stay if she did not pay the rent, and because Kirti wasn't there at that moment, Porni had no other choice but to leave. Thankfully, Kirti's friends invited Porni to eat for free at a wedding. When they were trying the food, Porni criticized the shape and taste in the food there. Apparently, the wedding hired catering services from the hotel where Ashwin worked, and Ashwin happened to hear the criticism and couldn't accept it. Chef Anand was also there. It turned out that Chef Anand was Ashwin's direct superior and biological father. Chef Anand was amazed and took the positive side of Porni's criticism, in contrast to Ashwin, who instead challenged Porni to show her cooking skills, and without hesitation, Porni immediately cooked the same food as well as making a special dessert for Chef Anand, the person who had been her inspiration since childhood. Chef Anand was amazed by the creation and taste of Porni's cooking, and unexpectedly, Porni was immediately accepted by Chef Anand to work in the kitchen of the Royal Colosseum, even though Ashwin looked annoyed by the decision. By working hard, Porni was finally able to make money to pay the rent at Kirti's boarding house. One day, the hotel where Porni worked was busy with the arrival of a special guest, the French president, who was planning to have lunch there. While the others were busy preparing dishes, Ashwin arrogantly forbade Porni to help. Several types of French food were served neatly on the table. However, the president didn't like it because initially he had hoped that he would be served typical Indian food. Chef Anand was very embarrassed to hear the president's words, especially when he entered the kitchen. He was disappointed after seeing that all the Indian dishes made by Ashwin looked ordinary. At that moment, Porni volunteered to make a special Indian cuisine, and when the dish was finished, Chef Anand immediately became enthusiastic and asked the president, who was about to leave, to try this special dish. The president finally agreed to try it. When the president was about to eat it, Porni politely suggested that he eat the food with his hands, of course, to be even more delicious. The president followed Porni's suggestion. As soon as the dish was eaten, the president immediately showed a very satisfied expression. He closed his eyes to get better taste of it and praised Chef Anand for it. But the humble Chef Anand did not want to accept praise for other people's hard work. Therefore, he immediately introduced Porni so that Porni could explain to the president about the origin of this dish. It was the first Indian rice dish ever, even before the biryani was invented. The president was amazed by that, so as a form of gratitude, the president presented Porni with a rare gold coin, limited prints from France, as rare as Porni's abilities. Due to Porni's achievements, she was immediately promoted. Not only that, she was also chosen to represent the hotel to take part in a cooking competition to win the title of India's Best Chef, which would be held several weeks later. Ashwin, who was not happy, intended to harm Porni. He deliberately pretended to order a cake for a VIP customer. Of course, Porni didn't suspect anything at that time and immediately made the order. As soon as Porni finished making it and was about to bake it in the oven suddenly caught fire and exploded, which injured Porni so badly that she was rushed to the hospital. Porni's family and friends were very worried about her condition. Even though Porni had disappointed her father and mother, they still took care of Porni and looked after her well. One time, when Porni drank the juice made by her mother, she protested because the juice was not sweet, even though her mother had put a lot of sugar in it. Knowing the oddity, Porni panicked and ate what she could find. She even acted strangely by running out of the hospital to the cafe to eat some of the food there, including salt and chili. But strangely, she couldn't taste anything. Porni was devastated because she, who since little could recognize food with her eyes closed, tragically could no longer taste anything. According to the doctor, the accident affected the brain nerves leading to her tongue, which made her lose her sense of taste, but fortunately, her sense of smell was still functioning well. This reality was very painful for Porni because as a chef, losing the sense of taste was the same as losing everything. Her dream of becoming India's best chef was shattered. She immediately vented her anger at her father by saying he must be happy because she had failed and that his wish to marry her to the man he picked would happen. Porni asked her father to just bring her back home. Unexpectedly, as soon as Porni got discharged from the hospital, her father didn't take her home, but instead to meet Chef Anand. Rangarajan told Chef Anand about Porni's condition. He said that since Porni was little, Chef Anand was the person who inspired her to become the best chef. Rangarajan knew that bringing her home was his wish, but even so, if he did it, her dream would be gone. He decided to endure the blame from the people and wanted Chef Anand to help Porni achieve her dream. Since that day, Porni was entrusted to Chef Anand to be trained, but due to the trauma, her cooking was no longer as delicious as before. Porni was increasingly frustrated with her situation, but Chef Anand tried to encourage her by saying that losing her taste buds wouldn't hinder her from cooking the best dish. It was love that made the dish tasty. She didn't lose her ability to cook, but her love of cooking. Thanks to advice from Chef Anand, Porni regained her confidence, and the result was as expected. Her food was as delicious as ever. It turned out that Chef Anand already knew that Porni's accident was all because of Ashwin, who put explosives in the oven. He hated this action, but even so, he couldn't report Ashwin's crime because it affected his reputation and could only fire Ashwin from his position as executive chef. Chef Anand was increasingly disappointed when the hotel board of directors made a scapegoat of Porni for protecting the hotel's name. She was blamed for her negligence and was fired from her position. The director even hired Ashwin back and appointed him as the hotel's representative at the cooking competition. With the board of directors' decision, Chef Anand made the shocking decision to resign from there. News of Anand's resignation spread quickly, causing other hotel owners to flock to meet him. Tempting offers were offered to him, starting from being a director to share ownership. Some of the hotel owners were even willing to make Porni their representative in the cooking competition. At that time, Porni felt guilty, but Chef Anand emphasized that his resignation was a form of responsibility for his mistakes as leader. The prestigious cooking competition finally started. It was watched by people from all over India. The winner of the competition would not only be crowned India's best chef, but would also be employed as an executive chef at a 7-star hotel in one of the most luxurious hotels in UAE. The competition was attended by 16 contestants, including Ashwin and Porni. The challenge in the first round was to make a typical dish from a country chosen by each participant, but behind that, each participant would be given a kind of challenge. Ashwin was challenged to cook without a knife, while Porni got an unreasonable challenge, namely not being able to use the burner. Turned out that before the competition started, Ashwin had bribed one of the committee members to make Porni lose. The other participants had prepared the ingredients to start cooking, while Porni was still confused about cooking without fire. At that time, Farhan tried to help her by giving a hint. That was where Porni remembered that in the past she received lessons from Asavad. She then took rice flakes and soaked them for 10 minutes to make soft rice. Then she mixed raw bananas, vegetables, and several other ingredients in salt water until they cooked by themselves without fire, but the problem was that Porni didn't know whether the food would be delicious or not because she could only feel it by smelling the aroma. After all the dishes were finished, it was time for the judges to taste. Several dishes received praise from the judges, including Ashwin's dish, which turned out to be so delicious and beautiful. Next was Porni's dish, which came from South India. The dish looked very simple, but even so, the taste was outstanding. After the assessment was finished, of the 16 contestants, only a few people managed to get through to the next round, and Porni's name was not mentioned at all. It turned out that the judges had deliberately kept a surprise. Porni's dish was announced as the best dish, and she had the right to advance to the next round too. Many people started to support Porni, including Santosh, her ex-fiancé. He tried to get close to her because she was popular. Porni passed round after round very impressively, until finally the competition was left with 2 people in the final round. They were Porni and Ashwin. After Porni made it to the final round, a big controversy started to arise because Ashwin cheated again by bribing one of the committee members named Manohar to slander Porni. Manohar spoke loudly to the media, admitting that he had been given money by Porni to get through the rounds. The slander against Porni immediately circulated widely on social media, giving rise to pros and cons in the community. Even Porni would be summoned by the Indian Chef Association and threatened with disqualification if the investigation proved her guilty. Even though the media did not know that Ashwin had cheated, Chef Anand was convinced that Ashwin was behind the slander. He even admitted that he would defend Porni. These words made Ashwin angry and had the heart to beat his father so hard that ended him in the hospital. While Porni was facing an investigation from the Indian Chef Association, she firmly denied everything. She also admitted that she didn't know Manohar and that the handshake during the competition was just a congratulation. Porni admitted that her cooking would still be delicious because she used her other senses. She then gave an example of a similar case outside the culinary field. One of them was Beethoven. Despite his hearing disorder, he succeeded in compiling the best symphony. Then Stephen Hawking, a great wheelchair-bound physicist. After hearing Porni's explanation, the association's eyes opened and decided that Porni was innocent and had the right to continue the final round. The final round between Porni and Ashwin finally began, and the challenge this time was to cook according to the food that was most chosen by the audience. Unexpectedly, the most choice fell on biryani. Of course, this was the toughest challenge for Porni because since childhood, biryani was the one single dish she could never deal with. That made Farhan and Kirti nervous because they knew that biryani was Porni's weakness. Ashwin was getting ready to cook while Porni was still pensive. She suddenly remembered Farhan's mother's words before. According to her, the biryani she made was very delicious. Not because of the recipe, but before cooking, she always prayed to God. At that very moment, Porni kneeled and began praying like a Muslim. She asked God for help so that her food could be delicious and special. After finishing praying, she started cooking with confidence. Once the dish was finished, for the first time, Porni's biryani tasted very delicious. Likewise, Ashwin's biryani was no less delicious. The judges were stunned by the cooking of the two contestants, and because it was difficult to choose, the judges finally decided on a tie. But because there had to be a winner in each challenge, the judges held an additional round with a blind taste test. This might not be fair for Porni, who had lost her sense of taste. Farhan protested to the judges, however. In cooking competitions, the rules were every chef had to be able to distinguish the food ingredients. In this challenge, Ashwin smoothly identified the ingredients by tasting them, while Porni had to smell the aroma and also touch it to feel the texture. Both Ashwin and Porni could answer up to the fourth ingredient, but when it came to the fifth ingredient, Ashwin answered incorrectly, while Porni, who also had difficulty, somehow managed to answer correctly, which made her get a perfect score. Porni finally became the winner of the competition, which also indicated that her dream had been achieved to become the best chef in India. Her family and friends looked very happy. Likewise, the people who used to insult her had turned to praising her. When Porni was about to be handed her victory plaque, she called her father to come forward. Rangarjan was very proud and embarrassed because the daughter who once underestimated and disappointed the family had become the family pride. He apologized for deliberately hindering Porni's dreams in the past, and at the same time, returning Porni's spatula that he broke. At the end of the film, Ashwin decided to leave home and refused to continue his father's company while Porni's career was increasingly brilliant by becoming an executive chef at a 7-star hotel in Dubai. What was even more amazing was that Porni didn't forget where she came from. She taught women in her village to struggle and survive through the food business.